Dear Platinum Games, holy crap, are you living in my house? Have you overheard my inebriated rantings and ravings about how there aren't any games that combine perfectly crafted, nay, virtuosically sculpted fan service with compelling characters, consistent writing, and fun, Dark Soulsy gameplay? Yoko Taro, get out of my closet! Even more irritating, this game was out a solid month before I wasted an entire week playing the piece of garbage BioWare pissed into a bucket before slapping a Mass Effect logo on it. To think, instead of spending that week grinding my own kneecaps off with a belt sander and repeating to myself, maybe if I just keep going, this will eventually become fun, I could have been zooming around a post-apocalyptic world as a Lolita goth android with a fetish for swords and stepping on 9S's little face. But I didn't come here to dunk on Mass Effect Andromeda. The internet as a whole is doing a pretty good job without me piling on more than I already have. Instead, today, I want to focus my laser beam science vision on this surprisingly successful game about lingerie models with the strength of Superman. I don't know what it is about games that combine bullet hell, creators with an encyclopedic knowledge of video game tropes, and incorporating saving and loading into their core plot structure, but damn if I don't definitely have a specific type of game that really gets me freaking pumped to play it. Nier Automata is like Undertale plus magical girls. Anyway, enough fawning, and let's pick this game about sexy androids apart and get to the science! And while unfortunately the science isn't goddamn terrifying this week, it is absolutely some of the coolest stuff I've ever looked into. So, let's get to it, shall we? This is like the smallest spoiler on the planet, but saving your game in Nier Automata isn't a meta mechanic like it is in most other games that aren't Undertale. It's an in-game thing that you actually experience. Effectively, you're backing up your android brain. So, if you die, it's no biggie. You can just download yourself into a backup body with a fresh skirt and hairdo, good as new. And while this mechanic seems kind of arbitrary to look at, since the game made it clear that this is something important, I couldn't help myself. How possible would it be to back up your entire brain on a server somewhere? I mean, it's not even a ludicrous question to ask. Technology is getting exponentially more advanced, even as I'm making this video right now. In fact, the information I'm gonna dump into your head like it's a download from the Matrix will be irrelevant in a couple of decades. You save your game by reaching access points and unlocking them, but it gets deeper than that. This isn't a wired upload. Once unlocked, you're not required to physically visit an access point like your grandpa's save points. Goodbye, Cloud Strife, heading toward that. You know, I never knew what this thing was supposed to be. A freaking, what are you? A question mark with a diamond? I just Anyway, no, once you unlock an access point, you can upload your personality when you're within a certain distance from it. Free Wi-Fi, son! This got me thinking, could you actually upload an entire human consciousness via Wi-Fi? I mean, could you do it at all? In order to figure this out, we're gonna have to do some cross-disciplinary work by combining computer science, neuroscience, and signal engineering. So, hold on to your butts, it's science time! Where to start? Okay, that's the question. All right, let's start with something every human has used for good or ill every single day before we get to the thing that most of us in modern times use every day. The brain. How do you build a brain? I have no idea. I'm not a real scientist. I just play one on TV. But we don't have to know exactly how a brain works in order to know how one could be wirelessly uploaded. We just need to know how big it is. If you're a fan of film theory and you caught the video on Ghost in the Shell, you'll remember that they stipulated that the human brain is 2.5 petabytes. That's petabytes, Pat, not pentabytes. Pentabytes are how black metal bands measure their hard drive size. Not that I should be throwing stones. I totally messed up saying epidural last time. Where was I? Oh, right. petabytes. So you may know this 2.5 petabyte number, but where's it coming from exactly? What does it mean? Well, here's the 411. Our brains are made up of about 100 billion neurons, and each one of those has roughly 1,000 connections to neurons around it. That's over 1 trillion freaking connections, you feel me? Now, when your brain does, well, like anything, these connections send electrical impulses to one another. Computers communicate in ones and zeros. That's called binary. Scientists at the Salk Institute, however, who have been spending years constructing a functioning model of a rat hippocampus, measured 26 different intensities of signals neurons can send, as opposed to just 2. Which, if you're thinking like a computer, means that our brains are coded in, 2 is binary, 26 is quinvigantary. When you add up all the bits and pop them into bytes, this gets you 2.5 petabytes. Now, there are some problems with thinking about the brain this way. As we'll explain later, while it is possible for digital systems to take advantage of analog signals to send digital signals, brains are entirely analog. They don't have bits. They have, well, okay, if I knew what they had instead of bits, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be in a tropical country getting full-service massages from women that look like 2B every day. Point is, they're not digital medium. So trying to compare us is, well, gonna get messy. Problem the second is that if you could compare digital systems to our neurons in this way, knowing how many different signal strengths a neuron is capable of sending doesn't tell you jack shit if you don't know the encoding system. More on that later. That being said, we're just gonna take this 2.5 petabyte number that will totally and completely be out of date at any moment as new scientists discover more things. Plus, the people at Salk are smarter than I am. So, we need to know this because we need to have some estimate of the size of a brain so we know how to transmit it. Now, if you want 2.5 petabytes for yourself in 2017, I hope you have the best credit card in the world. It'd take over 9,000 micro SD cards crammed into a box weighing almost 5 kilograms or over 10 pounds and would cost over $1.5 million. Why micro SDs? Because otherwise you're looking at a stack of 2,500 terabyte hard drives. They take up their own friggin' bookcase and weigh God knows how much. And it still costs a buttload. So yeah, that thing between your ears is kind of expensive. It takes 8 bits to make a byte, which means that we've got 20 petabits in our 2.5 petabytes, or over 20 quadrillion bits to take care of. We only have limited time here before Ronnie starts to get fatal carpal tunnel syndrome, so I'm sorry, neuroscience geeks, it's here that we have to stop talking about the brain and move on to Austin. What about the hierarchical pattern recognition theory of shut up? There's no time. Get back in the comment section where you belong. We gotta talk about signals. How is information sent wirelessly? Photons, baby. You know, light. Well, sorta. It's not light if you think of light being only what we can see. Light comes in all shapes and sizes, though, from barely measurable waves and a wavelength of over 100,000 kilometers and a frequency of 3 hertz, all the way up to incredibly energetic and incredibly deadly, very high energy gamma rays with frequencies in the tens of octillions of hertz and wavelengths as tiny as the radius of neutrinos. All of these things are essentially the same thing. The only difference? Their energy. The more energy, the higher the frequency, and generally speaking, the smaller the wavelength. The relationship between wavelengths, frequency, energy, and power are complicated. For the most part, higher frequencies means more energy, but there are ways to inject higher amplitudes without manipulating the frequency. A perfect example of this is microwave ovens. Most microwave ovens actually operate at the exact same frequency as wireless routers, but you can't explode an egg with your router. Light, gamma radiation, radio waves, they're all the same thing. Electromagnetic radiation with different levels of energy. They are weaves of synchronized electric and magnetic fields that are measured in hertz, which means cycles per second. Every time a light wave completes a cycle, that is, moving from crest to crest, that's one cycle in the hertz. Electromagnetic radiation that we can see with our eyes cycles between 430 to 750 terahertz, meaning visible light waves cycle over 430 to 750 trillion times a second. So, how do you send information with electromagnetic radiation? Well, the best examples are AM and FM radio waves. AM stands for amplitude modulation, and it's used to send sound to people across miles. This is done by modulating the amplitude of the electromagnetic wave. This can then be read as a sound wave by your car or radio's antenna. FM, or frequency modulation, works similarly, but instead of changing up the amplitude of the wave, it changes the frequency. These waves can transmit sound to your radio receiver, and it's freaking awesome. Of course, these are analog signals and they're prone to interference, which you hear as static. Your phone, your computer, and everything else that exists that runs off of computers needs data to be perfect, or the whole system could come crashing down. And it's here that the power of electromagnetic radiation's ability to travel vast distances unimpeded is married with modern computing to send digital signals. Digital just means it's operating with ones or zeros, on or off. This makes it really easy to tell when, say, a high amplitude wave with a lot of interference is a 1 and a low amplitude wave with a lot of interference is a 0. As you may have guessed it, since each cycle of a wave carries information, not usually just a 1 or a 0, really smart people have spent decades maximizing the efficiency of the analog nature of electromagnetic waves to send batches of code, but the principle remains true. Each cycle equals one small chunk of information. This means it stands to reason the higher frequency of light you use, the more information you can send, right? Totally! But there are limitations. For one, the higher frequency of electromagnetism you use, the more it attenuates or dissipates in the atmosphere. I mean, AM radio, which is measured in kilohertz, or thousands of cycles per second, can travel tens, sometimes over hundreds of miles. But my wireless router, which is measured in gigahertz, has trouble when I'm in my bedroom. It's not even that far away, but it is past a wall. And higher frequencies are terrible at penetrating walls. Fiber optics use visible light to transmit information, but they have to lock the light away from everything else in cables where there's no interference. So sending more information wirelessly to the point where you're uploading an entire 2.5 petabytes of a brain in Nier isn't as simple as turning your frequencies up as high as they'll go. Taking all of this, we can finally figure out how saving works in Nier Automata. I want to base my numbers off of how long it takes for me to save in an actual game, since that can vary from computer to computer and from console to console. Thankfully, there's actually a segment in the game where you upload your personality in an actual arbitrary time frame. It's a bit spoilery, so I won't show you the actual spot, but all 2.5 petabytes of sweet Android brain is uploaded in 32.64 seconds, which gives us an upload speed of over 612 terabits per second. How fast is that? Approximately 3 billion% faster than my upload speed of 20-ish megabits per second. And that's wired! You could upload the entire iTunes music library in 5 frickin' seconds at these speeds. This is freaking fast, but extraordinarily, it's not impossible, especially 9,000 years in the future. Scientists at the University College of London sent data at 1.125 terabits per second. Sure, this is 0.16% of the speed of our Nier network, and it was over fiber optics, but this is something that happened last year. 5G broadband is looking to take advantage of the faster transmission speeds of higher frequencies of electromagnetic waves by completely changing network structures. Instead of using one giant tower to service multiple devices, they're planning on putting several smaller towers that broadcast to smaller areas. Using a combination of beamforming and friggin' smart transmitters that can actually bounce wireless signals off of reflective surfaces dynamically to reach devices, phone service providers are looking to get us internet on our phones. It's way way faster than what we have now. And the access points of Nier Automata seem to be acting almost exactly like this. Using a combination of 2B's cannon height of 1.68 meters and her run speed, most access points have a radius of 250-ish meters, and a lot of them are blocked by tall buildings and won't work. And sometimes they do. Technology, am I right? You know, I started researching this video convinced that it would be absolutely absurd trying to broadcast the contents of a human brain over airwaves, but honestly, it's possible that speeds like this will exist in my lifetime. Between orthogonal frequency division multiplexing that can send huge batches of information with overlapping waves, multiple input, multiple output, and beamforming, it's kind of amazing that in what is essentially a post-apocalyptic world without a lot of radio interference, they're not able to get faster speeds than this. Although, considering they're capable of sending this information to satellites in geostationary orbit above the Earth before beaming that information down to the bunker in orbit 7,000 kilometers above Earth, maybe I'm being too critical of 1000G broadband. I just hope that they don't figure out that we used to call our phones androids. Although, I admit, I do wish that my Pixel XL had an ass like 2B's. Sincerely, Austin. Thank you everyone for watching my video on Nier Automata. This video, there's a lot of information I didn't include in here, like how I figured out the orbital height of the bunker, which I did using the window and its roundness and the visibility of the thing. It doesn't matter. I did it. It wasn't relevant, but I figured it out anyway. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to Game Theorists. Follow me on Twitter at ARHorrigan, and let me know any games that you want to know the science of. Don't ask me to do Warframe. I'm not going to do Warframe. You can suck it. Never gonna do Warframe. You can't make me.